Hello, this is Michael Fagan, and welcome to my action research presentation. This is my problem statement. My problem statement is that over the last few placements, I've had a lot of difficulties with classroom management. There have been lots of times where students have not been on task, not making effective use of time, or not stopping to listen when I speak. Although my placements have been with intermediate students, I would be interested in strategies for junior classrooms as well. This is a problem that can cover pretty much any grade level. Looking back, I know I did not make use of all the positive reinforcements for classroom management that I could have, and I lacked initiative when managing my classroom. I would like to find a system of classroom management that feels comfortable for me and works for my students. In summary, my research question is, what are the most effective strategies for classroom management for junior and intermediate grades? Just a small definition of classroom management. Classroom management refers to a wide variety of skills and techniques that teachers use to keep students organized, orderly, focused, attentive, and on task during class. This is my literature annotated bibliography. The first source that I wanted to go over was Handbook of Classroom Management. This source is fairly recent, at 2015. It proposes that the field of study of classroom management is not neatly organized and consists of many different lines of inquiry from multiple disciplines. This can make entering this field of research very difficult, as I found out from researching it myself. This source's goal is to provide an easy entry to understanding the field. It provides multiple up-to-date strategies for classroom management, such as preventative strategies, school-wide initiatives, anti-bullying strategies, and shifting from compliance to responsibility-based learning. It also reconsiders expulsionary forms of discipline, to name a few. I know that from my experiences, expulsionary forms of discipline, such as having students leave the classroom, go into the hall, go into another room, or being held back, are quite common. But I wanted to see if there's a more effective way of doing it, as I don't find that it was very effective for me. My next source that I would like to talk about was a small article on behavior in classroom management, and it focuses on pre-service teachers and if we are preparing our teachers correctly. This article argues that many pre-service teachers are not prepared for the behavior of their students and are not equipped with strategies to handle them. This results in, of course, difficulties with their teaching and their learning. This study analyzes classroom management techniques taught in pre-service teacher education programs. It overall finds that the strategies taught in these programs tend to be general management strategies and more specific skills or strategies. I'll be going over more detail and more specifics on these strategies in my summary. Overall, more work needs to be done to highlight strategies for increasing certain appropriate behaviors in students and assessing others for pre-service teachers. My final source is Classroom Management and Assessment. This is not one single source, but is rather a collection of multiple authors writing on the topic of classroom management. Although they also write on assessment, I am focusing more on the classroom management sections, which is about half of the book. This source offers many chapters on classroom management that give immediate and positive steps that I can take for my practice. Such strategies include being proactive, being explicit with expectations, reinforcement strategies, and making adjustments to plans as needed. I'll be going into more detail on the strategies found in this book in my summary as well. My literature summary. Like I said earlier in this presentation, I have had lots of difficulties with classroom management in my past placements. There have been many times where students have not been on task, not making effective use of time, or not listening. Looking back, I know I did not do as good of a job as I could have done, but I feel that I didn't have the resources or the strategies in mind to do it effectively. And I wanted to find some strategies and resources that would be effective for me and my classes. Using the resources that I found, I was able to explore a wide variety of strategies for better classroom management in my practice. These sources provided me with a variety of strategies that I hope to try and implement in my classrooms. As I implement these, I hope to come to a conclusion about which ones work best and which ones do not, and overall come to an understanding of why the ones that were effective were and why the other ones were not. Two of my sources, Emmer and Slavin, will be used to take direct and explicit classroom management strategies from my practicum. The strategies in these books will vary, and I will not be able to use all of them in the course of a placement or in a year, but I hope that I can choose to implement the ones that will be in greater need for my classroom and assess their effectiveness. For example, in classroom management assessment, they highlight some good strategies such as emphasizing behavioral expectations. This can be as simple as, at the beginning of class or at the beginning of the day, stating what behaviors you're expecting your class to show. Promoting active learning and student involvement, simply encouraging student participation. Identify and be explicit about behaviors that are needed for the day's agenda. Again, similar to the first point, being explicit about how you want your students to behave for the day. And to have support systems for students with behavioral problems. This includes having access to an EA or a resource teacher who might be able to help you with more problematic students with behavioral problems. The other source by Flower and Herring will be useful as a reference for what I know or do not know going into my placements for my pre-service teaching education on classroom management. Some universal strategies that they include in this article and are commonly taught to pre-service teachers are setting down rules, classroom routines, managing of student assignments. This could be assignment expectations, due dates, formats, things like that, parental communication, and enforcing a positive learning environment in the classroom, something that we have talked a lot about in our classes. However, all of these are pretty general, and most pre-service teachers are not prepared with strategies to increase appropriate behaviors that they are desiring. Such strategies to increase appropriate behaviors include giving specific feedback. So a student who is doing something positive that you want to see more of, give specific feedback on why that is good. Praise, as a general one, and providing students with choice. I've come to realize that students who are forced to do one activity, if they're uninterested, they oftentimes lash out. Providing students with multiple options allows them to express themselves in different ways that they might find more engaging and interesting. If they're more engaged and interesting, they're less likely to be behavioral problems. These are strategies that might prove more successful in managing my classrooms later on. My final summary point. The classroom management strategies that I will implement will largely depend on the needs and attitudes of my students. So although that these are good, general, and specific strategies, I will have to adapt them for every classroom. So having a large repertoire of management strategies that I can use to pull from with any classroom will be a useful tool to have. That being said, there are some general strategies that I believe I did not use fully in previous placements that have been recommended in the sources from my research. These could include things such as being more proactive rather than reactive in classroom management, using positive reinforcement strategies, being explicit with my expectations at the beginning of my placement or activities, using preventative strategies to stop bad behavior, and limiting the use of expulsionary discipline such as sending students outside or keeping them in on breaks. These are only a few strategies that I can use during my placement from my sources. Their use or lack of use will depend on the classroom climate, student behavior, and my associates' expectations of me. That being said, I will still endeavor to find and apply some of these strategies from these sources in my classroom management. These sources have provided me with a variety of strategies that can be used to answer my research question of what are the most effective classroom management strategies. My research action plan. Data sources. My data sources will be including teachers' journals, teaching journals to reflect on different classroom management strategies, observational and anecdotal notes looking for student improvements in behavior in class, and a rating scale of classroom behavior under different management strategies to provide some quantitative data of student behavior and effectiveness of different classroom strategies. How to get triangulation, validity, and reliability. My collection of data will include teacher reflection journals, observation, and rating scales. This will help ensure triangulation because I'm using 3 different sources of data. My journals are largely reflections of my own expectations. It's qualitative. My observational notes will be retellings of what occurred in my classroom to help inform my reflections and my ratings. And finally, I'll be using a rating scale to grade my students' performance in the classroom and to give myself some quantitative data. My rating scale will help ensure reliability, as I'll be using the same criteria to grade my students' performances using different classroom management techniques. This will allow for a consistent rating across different strategies. The validity of my data will be enhanced by using observational notes as a record of what happened in my class, and my teacher journal as a record of my thought process during and after using different strategies. My rating scale will also help ensure validity by providing a measure for my classroom behavior. The participants and setting for my research. My classroom students will be involved in this study. Ideally, a full class of 30 in the junior intermediate grade range. The data will be collected at the school over my next placement. Some ethical considerations. I'll be able to maintain and ensure confidentiality by avoiding using my students' real names in my teaching journals and observational notes. Coded names or pseudonyms will help me understand my notes while still keeping my students' identities in my research confidential. The timeline for my data collection process. On the left, you see all the types of data that I will be collecting: my anecdotal notes, my teaching journals, and the classroom management strategy rating scale. My anecdotal notes will be written once a week from September to April. If this is over the course of a normal teaching year, if it was for a placement, it would be over the course of a single placement. As for my teacher journals, they will be written up monthly or after finishing with a classroom management strategy. Although I'm planning that it will take a month to fully integrate and test a classroom management strategy, for some of them it might take less. And finally, my classroom management strategy rating scale. Again, monthly or after finishing with the classroom management strategy if it takes less than a month. My final closing thoughts. This research study would help me as a teacher because it would increase my knowledge, understanding, and access to various classroom management strategies. Different students respond differently to different management strategies, so having a larger repertoire of strategies to use is a useful knowledge and skill to have as a teacher and to help ensure the success of my classes in every year or placement. I hope that you have enjoyed this presentation, and I hope that it was helpful in understanding classroom management strategies and how that you can provide your research skills in any field that you want. Thank you for your time. Have a nice day.